Life and business can be easy, but us silly humans love getting in our own way. My name is Nico Rapclis, and I've had a wild journey. From releasing traumas that I held on to for decades, to playing college athletics, working with multi-million-dollar brands, having a spiritual awakening, and now coaching incredible humans navigate their inner and outer world. The Just Grow podcast is my outlet to share and help others with life and business. After investing north of $100,000 into my personal and professional development, the Woo plus Do formula is what has served me best. A healthy combination of mindset, energetics, consciousness, spirituality, self-healing, and discovery, matched with a high-level strategy, principles, focus, optimization, and accountability to help you be, do, and have everything that has been placed in your heart. This podcast is for the impact-driven entrepreneur that is finally ready to start thriving internally and externally. Welcome to Just Grow.
Bro, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm already like super excited about this because we got to meet not too long ago, which it's interesting because a lot of the people I interview, it seems like I'm friends with them for a little bit longer, but I feel like my intuition is getting stronger and stronger. I'm recognizing people that I really want to connect with and just getting in great environments. Shout out Stacey Davis for holding an amazing space. We got to meet so many cool people that night, and we just had some incredible conversations.
Yeah.
Especially around vision and utilizing tools to help us craft that vision and remind ourselves of that vision. So I was like, damn, let's sit down.
Yeah.
Let's have a combo. Let's turn on the cameras and rock and roll.
Absolutely.
So here we are. Just gonna make sure. Plug it in the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for being here, man.
No, thanks for having me, man. That was an amazing night. So many cool people and good connections, and we hit it off like right away. So appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. So as mentioned, I think probably the things that I'd love to talk about is hear a little bit more about your story. You know, you were sharing a little bit about like how you went away for a little while. I thought that very intriguing and something I'd love to hear more about. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your solar company, how you got into that, the quick success. I don't say quick, but you've been in it for 15 years, but the great success that you've had so far from my perspective. And then I'd love to obviously talk about vision and how do we really train our minds to become the best versions of ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can start. I grew up here in Arizona. So I had a beautiful family. I grew up with two sisters, my mom and dad. And so I was super athletic, played a lot of sports, just kind of a normal kid. When I was 6, both my sisters went to Our Lady Perpetual Help, which is the Catholic school. So when I was 6, unfortunately, my sister Danielle, so I was the youngest and she was the middle, and then I have an oldest, that's Jessica. So Danielle unfortunately died in a tragic bus accident in front of our house. And it's kind of like a little bit of a bomb kind of went off in my whole family circle. It was went from kind of just being a normal kid, thinking about sports and, class or whatever else, and to, my whole family dynamic just kind of shifted, right? So from there, it kind of, there's parts of my life I don't even really remember. Like I'm gonna black out from it, but just remember it was a pretty tragic bus accident. So like the entire school was involved, and there's just a lot of people coming over and kind of giving our family food, and I remember a lot of people hugging me, and but ultimately, like a lot of stress, typically families don't stay together, the husband and wife, right? When things happen like this, the statistics aren't in favor typically of that. So, my mom basically split up from my dad. They divorced, and then she ended up basically moving to Boston with another man and getting remarried. So in a very short period of time, between like 6 and 8, I lost my sister. My mom basically remarried, moved away to Boston. I think in her eyes, the plan was always for me to kind of go back east with her, but it was just a lot of changes, right? So the family kind of decided, hey, no, you stay here. And
This was all at 6 years old, or it was like a couple year span?
My sister died when I was 6, and then my mom moved away when I was like 8. So yeah, just like a 2-year span, just real quick. So I think, looking back now as an adult, I understand what happened, right? As a little kid, I was kind of confused and just like, what the hell? It really did feel like a bomb went off in my family, and it started a lot of turmoil that kind of later came out when I was like 12, 14. I think looking back, it was a lot of stories around like being abandoned, right? And my mom never really like abandoned me, but it just felt like she just left, right? My sister just like one day's here, the next day not, right? And so a lot of the feelings and associations that I've had as a young kid kind of started to act out a little bit later in life. My dad's a awesome man, like super genuine, great person, but he wasn't very like strong, like he wasn't very firm. My mom was kind of more of the enforcer, if you will. So I started just like goof off, like, you know, kind of get with the kids, all had kind of some type of family issues. And it's kind of funny to think about now in Scottsdale, like, but kids kind of almost doing more like, kind of if we were in the hard areas, we'd be like the gang, right? It's like we're, you know, stealing alcohol and, you know, selling drugs. I ended up started smoking a lot of weed, and you know, I was playing football, trying to like navigate everything. This was in high school at this point, and so yeah, it was a really fun time. Like I also just went through a lot of challenges as a kid. Before that point, like smoking weed for me kind of clicked something on. Like I just was able to kind of get out of being depressed and like kind of being this like kid that I'd moved schools a lot because of what happened, and because of that I started, you know, a little bit of getting made fun of and just situations where I feel like it was hard for me to kind of get a grasp and get that confidence that I needed. I think I was like seeking something outside of myself a lot when I was young. When I smoked weed for some reason, like I felt like it kind of like brought me back internally, and I really got something from that. But at the same time, I was messing with kids that were kind of getting in trouble, just doing dumb stuff, and that really wasn't me. Like I wasn't like a troublemaker by any means, but I was kind of seeking like the family that I kind of felt like I had lost a little bit.
Yeah.
My oldest sister, Jessica, you know, saw my younger sister die in her arms. So she was very, very traumatized from that. And, you know, my parents actually put her like, they thought that she was like manic or bipolar. And looking back, they didn't know back then, but she just had a traumatic event, right? Very unstable and needed help and probably needed more traumatic counseling. But, you know, she was basically put on lithium for like 14 years, and she had a lot of health effects. And so a lot of my life, it was seeing her kind of like go through these highs and lows. And she's such an amazing sister. She's such an amazing person. And but it was confusing, right? Again, as this little kid, I'm like seeing my mom not there, my one of my sisters is no longer here, and then my oldest sister is kind of like going through it. Like, so it just was interesting to see how the family all responded in different ways. Because I'd went this path where I kind of was acting out and being, you know, selling drugs to the high school and drinking and, you know, was being promiscuous with ladies, all the things that trying to just disconnect and not feel what I was feeling when I look back. But because of that, my parents started to kind of catch me with little things. And so I know your question was, you know, being sent away. Like my parents actually sent me away when I was 16. So 16, I got caught with like 2 ounces of weed, and then literally the next day I had another 2 ounces. So just to give you a perspective, like they tried a lot of things, and they're like, dude, this kid is just not getting it. I was definitely going down that route, and so they went to drastic measures. They met with this like counseling program up in Sedona that kind of advises, and so I had to go talk to this person. And little did I know, I'm pretty much telling him like, you know, hey, like he recommended a month later I'd be sent away. So my last day of sophomore year, pretty much had 2 transporters that came into my room and basically grabbed me. And, you know, my mom and my dad were there. It was like, you know, I think I was out drinking that night. And so it was a wild experience. There's this huge like linebacker dude and then this kind of tiny guy. And pretty much they were there in case I was to run or try to get away. They, you know, escorted me to the airport, and then we flew to, I think it was Salt Lake City in Utah, and then we took a car to Duchesne, Utah, which is where Second Nature, it's like a wilderness program. So that's where I basically had I was 2.5 months in the wilderness program. So yeah, it was pretty wild.
Man, I like as you're talking and as we've already talked, I feel like we could do like a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot.
There's so many like questions I want to ask and so much I want to get to as well. Maybe you could share just like briefly, just a little glimpse into like what that wilderness program was.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd say on a basic level, a lot of kids go there that have a lot of drug addiction or they have some type of serious thing, right? So it's, in some ways, it's kind of like a detox. When I look back at my experience, it was actually one of the easiest things I went through. It was 2.5 months. You pretty much go in, they strip search you, make sure you're not having anything weird. They take your blood, they drug test you, and then they send you out like hours into a car in the middle of the woods. And before you know it, you're like basically with a group of like, maybe 10 to 12 people. There's probably 3 or 4 staff. And you are separated from the group essentially. You feel like this is the biggest moment. You're like, what the hell just happened? I'm basically, my family's sent me away. I'm kind of like, what is this? But pretty much you get adapted quickly. Ultimately what you're doing there is you're hiking every day. You're doing like groups around the fire. You're learning, I can basically make fire with 2 sticks. If you do it within 6 seconds, you get an M&M bag or something like, so I had to beat that. So, yeah. But you're learning kind of to like basically talk about your feelings, right? You have a therapist that comes once a week that will meet with you. And then that therapist is basically reporting back to your family. And the craziest part about this experience is there's actually been a lot of money linked to these places that actually are being recommended to the treatment centers. So, basically, from these wilderness programs, they are typically recommending to your parents that you go somewhere else, right? And I was kind of on the fence. They were debating if I should go home or if I should go somewhere. And I must have said something in one of my sessions that made them feel like I needed to go somewhere. But from there, it was 2.5 months in the wilderness. And then by this point, I was a 190-pound sophomore. I was big. I played football. I was like probably 160, super lean. Big beard, like you're not shaving out there, you're showering from a bucket. It's very, very basic. You're eating beans and rice.
Wow.
But ultimately what I basically went to a program called Vista. That was basically a treatment center in Magna, Utah. And then my mom took me to that place. Usually they have another transporter, but they trusted her enough. And that was a really tough experience. Because I just didn't know where I was going. I was trying to be good. I was trying to make changes, but at the end of the day, I think I was just dealing with a lot of emotional stuff from childhood, right? And in this treatment center, that's when things intensified, like by 100. So this program, there was people that with crazy, cocaine addictions, meth addiction, right? Someone raped their sister in there. We had computer gamers, like people with their like gaming problems, essentially. So you just imagine all these different weird things, right? They separate the men and the women, and essentially what they do is they kind of gamify you getting out of there. So you have these levels, right? You start out as an RO, which is basically someone that can't speak to anyone else. You have to raise your hand. You're at the lowest level in the entire place, and you pretty much can't do much. Your access to everything is very low. And then you go to a level 1, you go to level 2, a level 3, and then a level 3 CL. 3 CL is like the captains, like they're like the leaders, essentially. And essentially, I remember, I'll never forget the very first time I went there, like someone did something goofy. And usually as kids in high school or whatever, the kids are on the same team against the teachers, right? So I kind of tried to buddy up with somebody. Well, he tattled on me instantly. So you just have to understand, everyone is basically manipulated and positioned to kind of become therapists and then tell on kids. And so you have this system where you're like, whoa, this is not normal. And then everything is rated on point systems. So literally everything you do, when you wake up, how quickly did you wake up? Did you make your bed into a military section, right? How quickly did you get your breakfast done? Or how did you clean your plates? You're graded on a 5 out of 5 or a 10 out of 10 on literally time blocks all throughout the day until you go to sleep. So your staff members are basically grading you based on how you did and how good you were, which then gets sent to the therapist. And so this entire model, if anyone wants to check this out, you can go on to Netflix. There's a episode called The Program. So they talk about these treatment centers, and it's really, really screwed up. Mine did not have any physical abuse, but the principles that they use is basically called attack therapy. So really what they're trying to do is they're trying to beat you down mentally, kind of like a military school, I would assume, but it's just intense. They'll be like, get up on the desk. They'll just come in a room and start yelling at people, right? Or you're also like, there's all these rules around, like, you can't go to the bathroom after eating because there's people that throw up, right? So you have to count in the bathroom, right? They spray chemicals, there's people that would supposedly get high off the chemicals or something. So there's just all these little things that you like can't do that's normal life, but they start to kind of manipulate you. Part of it is that you have to say, I am a drug addict or I am an alcoholic. That for me, like, it just didn't feel like that was not my truth, right? So you had to say that in order to kind of get out, right? I had to go to AA programs. And then once you go in AA, I think AA is a great program for a lot of people. For me, I was not an alcoholic, right? So it just felt like, I feel like I'm kind of living a lie, and I'm kind of have to lie in order to get out of here. They'll monitor your letters and basically, so you could write home and you can get on phone calls, but they would be on the phone with you, like on a second line, or they would basically read your letters before they sent out. So and they would have these shutdowns where they basically shut the entire place down. Like, someone would do something, someone stole something or whatever the case is, and they would just shut the entire place down. And in the groups is when you would get ripped up, because you're not only getting ripped up by the therapist, but the kids are coming after you. So they're constantly just trying to, like, they're trying their best. I think they thought this was a good thing. Like, I don't think anyone's like, hey, how do we screw these kids up? Yeah. But, ultimately, I have a lot of kids, died after that purely because they went back to drugs of choice, right? A lot of kids like me are crushing it, right? Like, I would say we're probably the 1%, but there's a lot
of all the people that go to those
most of the people are not doing great after that. They usually go further into drugs and abuse. I mean, as a manifesting coach, right? If you say, I am a lot, I am, like, you're basically reinforcing. What they did is they reinforced that you are a drug addict. I am an alcoholic, right? So if you reinforce that over and over again, and then you tell them that your friends and your family and people that, they're pieces of shit, they weren't really there for you, that may or may not have been the case. Some people may be so, but it really kind of isolates you from going back to anything you knew. And so what do kids do? After this program, they stayed in Utah with a bunch of drug addicts and a bunch of kids that are from all over the country that stayed there. And one by one, all these kids went back to basically their drug of choice, or maybe more. And I saw kids go back to, their drug of choice, and all of a sudden now they're doing like opioids, or they got to heroin. And so I saw really weird stuff in Utah. But that treatment center has been sued since, and they linked the money from the treatment center to the wilderness program. So I'll just say, like, as a sophomore, I was super confident to play football. Like, I'm not saying I didn't have my own challenges or thoughts I would have to work through, but I had a lot going for me, right? I was good looking. Like, I didn't have a problem talking to girls. I was pretty strong. I was, like, very athletic. Like, my priorities and everything was messed up, and I'm not saying I shouldn't have gone, but when I look back, like, I couldn't talk to girls after that. I couldn't speak confidently. Like, I couldn't do this. I couldn't public speak. So it really, really affected my mindset and my ability to kind of operate as a normal human being. My value and who I thought I was so low. So if their goal was to break you down, they did a great job at that. They really didn't do a great job of, like, building people up afterwards.
Yeah, because it's like, if you're going to break someone down, you got to build them back up. 100%. Otherwise, they're just, wow, that's remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, and it just goes to say, is like a couple of things that I pull from that whole story is how imperative your environment is.
Right.
Because even like what you're talking about throughout your story is like, you're having these challenges, and then all of a sudden you found yourself amongst kind of the troubled youth.
Right.
And then you started molding into that environment.
Yeah.
And then same where you're like around all these other people that are like really having challenges, and then coming to the other part I want to say is like identity is everything, which I think environment starts molding you to that. But then when you start speaking that out and say, I am an alcoholic, I am a drug addict,
right,
you keep on repeating that, eventually you're going to start believing that.
For sure.
And I've personally never been in AA, and I know a couple people that have gone, but that is one thing I don't agree with, is like, why do you keep on perpetuating and confirming that you are something you want to get out of?
For sure.
And it's interesting. This is something that has been really powerful for me, and I've had a lot of conversations around this, but a really good way to kind of affirm your way out of that is, instead of saying I am an alcoholic or I am a drug addict, you're saying, historically speaking, or I used to be.
Right.
So you're not like bringing it into the past and making it active. You're saying that was who I was.
100%.
Wow, that's
Wild.
wild, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dang, and even as you're explaining it, it's, I don't know why, but I get this thing like almost in the back of my head. I'm like, this is a great story to like how a superhero became a superhero. Like went out and got sent away and did this whole thing and then came back infinitely stronger. Because it's like, I obviously want to hear more of the progression and how this all translated into the solar world, and then your passion for vision as well. But it's like it sounds like you were kind of like a outlier there, and it had some adverse effects right away. But do you think that it added value to you eventually?
I'm honestly grateful for the experience. Like, it's hard for me to, in some ways it's hard for me to say that because there's so much pain associated with what happened. But I do believe that pain and that journey, whether you want to call it a superhero or rising, or I just know it's my journey, right? It's I feel like it's my plan that God set out for me. And honestly, it feels really, really good to accomplish what I've accomplished. And I don't talk a lot about this stuff. So like, just sharing this and stuff I'll talk about it with close friends, but usually not on a podcast. And I do think there's a piece of my story that does need to be shared. I know Paris Hilton kind of like blew this up a little bit on treatment centers and how it wasn't correct. And obviously I didn't go into the detail of things that happened there as because it could be a whole podcast on that. Sure. But I do ultimately feel grateful for the experience. I wouldn't say I felt that all this time. Like, there's been moments where I just felt really angry, right? And really upset at like my parents and I lost my voice there, right? So there's been in solar, like you're role playing, you're basically going through pitches, right? So the amount of like trials and tribulations I've had to do to be able to speak the same way, it's been a lot. So
yeah, and it's crazy too, because how you speak is just like an indicator of what your thoughts are. Mm-hmm. And so if you couldn't have spoke that tells me like what was going on internally. And like you said, you just like had a real decline and a declining transformation where you used to be this confident dude, maybe a little misaligned and priorities weren't set, but like, wow. And then to have your come back to who you are now and like what we see you as, it's incredible. Yeah. So why don't you start, like, how did you get in, I'm sure there's obviously like there's quite a bit of time from then to now. Right. I would love to hear a little bit more, like, how'd you get into solar and like, where has this success really came from?
For sure. I think, first I'll just say there was a moment when I, was going through all those struggles where I just changed my mindset, right? I was like, you're either going to be a victim to these situations, right? You're either going to say, I went to treatment, so I'm going to be X, Y, Z, right? Sure. Instead, it's like, hey, I'm going to turn the page. I'm going to write my chapter. I'm going to write my next piece. And that's been a big pivotal piece to my mindset that was able to help me get into some of these higher level careers in solar. And so I would say the other thing I've noticed, just being in 100% commission, right? Mm-hmm. If you focus on debt and when I moved to Las Vegas, I got into solar. Basically, I was living in Boulder, Colorado. I wanted to be in fitness and nutrition. So I moved up there. I finished my degree on ASU online. And I was working at this gym and selling memberships. And I just had this one of my friends, his dad owned a solar water heating company. And they just started, and these guys were making like $10,000, $12,000 when I was like 20. And so I knew I wanted to make a lot of money. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew if I stayed in the gym and the health industry, in my mind, I didn't think I would make that type of money. So that was the first thing that kind of got me into solar. I didn't have success right away, if I'm being honest. I've probably sold 2 or 3, so I made $2,000 or $3,000, which was a lot of money, for a 20-year-old back then. But it was actually leads. So they would have these crazy leads that barely knew they were getting solar. They're like, some government funds are available because there's 30% tax credit. So they're kind of putting a spin on, it was a little bit shady leads, I would say, but you'd get in there and it was I learned so much. The psychology of sales, I've learned how to displace a salesman image, question-based selling. The stuff that I learned back 15 years ago was like next level. And it's really what I teach a lot of my guys now. So I had a lot, like good success right away, but then I had a month or two that was like, oh man, I went back down. And a lot of it is because I had to role play in these big conference rooms with like 20 plus sales guys, right? So I was constantly being pulled back to some of my triggers and my trauma from treatment. Like I would literally go up to role play and shake. Like they called me in to do this one exercise where I had to sing "I'm a Little Teacup" in front of everyone because they knew like I just struggled, and I think they just thought you got to push them. And it was little by little, like I kind of got over it more and more, but it was a lot. Like my body would go through sensations, and so I can really relate to anyone that's like has trouble public speaking. Like I understand you kind of get out of your body, and I have a lot of techniques that have helped me kind of stay in my body and understand like breath work and meditation, a lot of stuff just calming. And so that's its own little topic. But I would say the thing that happened is I moved to Vegas with one of the offices that was doing really well, right? And my dog ended up dying when I moved up there, and I was already a little bit into debt and credit card debt. And so it just kind of multiplied. I had migraines, and I think I went to the hospital not knowing, like I had no insurance, and I got a CT scan, another $3,000 in debt. So pretty much in like a 2-month, 3-month span, I'm not selling the best. I moved to Las Vegas, and I'm in $8,000 in debt. And so another big piece of my story is really understanding like what you focus on is what your reality is. I know you're the man to talk to about this with all your manifestation coaching, but it really clicked for me. And I think sometimes that's why I'm grateful for my story. I'm grateful for these, trials and things that sometimes feel like, wow, that sucked. Like what? Wouldn't want anyone else to go through that. But sometimes you got to hit those low lows to really click. And I see that time and time again with the reps and people I mentor. And that was a light bulb for me. If I focus on reschedules and no-shows and cancels, and I focus on the debt that I'm having, I'm only going to see more of that in my life, right? And so that was really when I was kind of getting into the epiphany of like, wow, if I focus on success, I'm focusing on shaking the hand of customers after I sign them up, right? Focus on X amount of sales and really helping people. That I noticed that when I put it on impact or helping people, it's like a multiplier. It times that thing by 10, and how quickly you're going to receive that. So I will say that's part of my story, is understanding those two things. Solar has been a wild ride because there's been a lot of companies that did good. There's markets that changed. So Nevada Energy changed their rules on solar. So that company went out of business, for example, right? I had to move back to Arizona. I worked with a really large roofing company that had solar division, and they left in 2014 because of SRP changed some things. So my career has constantly been building management and learning my sales ability, right? And then seeing changes and having to adapt. And so it's been an amazing journey. We call it the solar coaster because reps will constantly say, I was with this company or this happened. And so the good thing is we use our experience. I basically got into really good companies though. I ended up basically building up myself as a director. So I was basically managing Phoenix, Tucson, in Texas I had Dallas and Austin, and then I was also managing Las Vegas. And that was an amazing experience because I reported directly to the CEO and basically would have to report to the CFO on budgets. And I just learned real business, right? I learned how like a $100 million company operates. And we're a huge piece of building that. And then they wanted to basically go from 100 million to 500 million. So where my story ends there, this was probably about 4 years ago or so, they brought in some bigwig that helped build one of the bigger solar companies up, and they gave them equity, and they're like, all right, basically VP, turn the directors into monsters, right? And so they just started doing all these weird moves though that just didn't make sense. Like I had the largest market in Austin, and they took Texas away from me, right? And then they told me like, hey, you gotta have like 80 million in sales, and I think I'd done 20 million, right? And it was just such a drastic jump. And if you didn't hit this specific amount, right, they were gonna pay me like less than half. And so I kind of addressed this with the CEO, and I just, that this was another big piece. Like I had this decision, right? And I remember even like, I think my mom was very supportive. Like my dad was super supportive, but people have certain tendencies, even your family, to recommend one way or the other. Like, should I stay with this like W-2 position? I was making $300,000 at like 32 or whatever. Like it was a great job. I had a ton of overrides and I had benefits, and I was with a great company and I had this decision. I was like, are you an entrepreneur or are you basically going to continue on this path? And I felt like I had learned everything I needed to learn at that point. And so I got real quiet. I had this moment and it just kept saying, like, you are on entrepreneurial path. Like, you are on entrepreneurial path. And if I would have listened to like certain family members or certain people with their own fears, right, I might have taken a different turn. And so I definitely recommend that to a lot of people that are looking for that inner guidance. Like, just get quiet and listen, because your soul or spirit or inner thoughts, whatever you want to call it, knows. And I'm very grateful for those moments. And so at that moment, I basically went and partnered up with my 2 business partners that I'm with now. I went to high school with these guys, Brett and Brock. They've been in security doing door-to-door for alarms, and they were getting into the solar space, because solar is like the pinnacle of commissions, and there's door-to-door with alarms, there's pest control, like there's all sorts of things that people do, but solar, you make a lot more in commission. So most people that learn about this, they want to get into solar. So I had all this solar experience. I've done door-to-door and everything, but I wasn't on their level. They've been doing like, some of the most efficient like teams. They run these teams and just crush it for the numbers of people they had. And so I was kind of like trying to recruit him into the company I was with, same time all this turmoil was happening. And before you know it, we're sitting down having conversations about why don't you just partner with us? We'll give you equity. I ended up going to Florida with these guys without any agreement. I had nothing set up. Like, it was like we're all negotiating in works of it. And it ended up being one of the best decisions of my life. Like, I love those guys. And we were with their other brother for a little bit and this other guy. And without getting into too much detail, that particular partnership didn't work out, but we ended up moving back to Arizona, kind of close to family, and that's where we started United Solar. So it's been a lot to get to.
Solar coaster.
Solar coaster. Yep.
So much yes in that. A few, like, I want to pull apart some things, and then I have a really, really good question. So one, I think something that's worth noting is I had a friend, he runs a big sales organization right now. I think they're doing $2-3 million a month. Mm-hmm. They're crushing. And I was working out with him a few years ago, and it was when I was still doing YouTube ads. And he was telling me he's like, here's my best piece of advice for anybody that's like kind of in that phase of like trying to figure things out and want to make some money and eventually build a strong business. He said, go work for a company that knows what they're doing while you're building up your skills.
Nice.
And it sounds like that's exactly what you got to do. You got to observe and witness and be in and just immerse yourself and learn from osmosis.
100%.
Because you just got to see how a proper company is built. You got to see all the intangibles.
Yep.
And because of that osmosis, then you're able to just eventually take all that learning and go apply it elsewhere. Because it is interesting as you go along the journey. There's not too many like crazy mystery secrets.
Right.
It's kind of just like
just model it.
Keep learning, keep modeling a little bit, and just keep taking action, and eventually you're going to succeed. And it's just about like thinking bigger and bigger from 100%. There. So like I think that was really cool to hear about your story. And I would say, like, just from my observation, I'd say that was like one of the biggest pieces that helped you so much.
For sure.
Again, coming back to what we talked about, it seems like a common theme is who you surround yourself with.
Right.
So be very intentional about who you surround yourself with, and that's why I do that.
Heck yeah.
Right? Is like that's why I love sitting down and having conversations like this, is because I want to get around people and understand their mindset, their beliefs, their patterns.
Right.
And then you start adopting that by osmosis.
For sure.
Right. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you, I got this such great piece of advice because I'm not sure if I shared this with you before, but when I was doing YouTube ads, I was actually working with an agency, a great learning experience. And I got fired. And the way he fired me was really weird.
Damn.
Just the way he said, like, it was totally meant to be. And I didn't want to be there anyways. I was wanting to dive into this stuff, but just the way he fired me, it was just like the verbiage that he used. I was like, that was really weird.
Yeah.
And so a person at the time told me, she said, it's really important to like journal and just be aware of things that happen, and when you know you're eventually going to be at that point.
Right.
So like from my perspective, this guy, he fired me. It was a good decision because
Right.
I wasn't supposed to be there.
Right.
But the way he fired me, I didn't love.
Right.
And so I was like journaling that and like making sure that I observe that and be intentional about like how I would approach that moving forward.
Yeah.
And so the question I wanted to ask you is that you started seeing some things that you didn't love with these owners and stuff in the company that you were working for. What would you say is something that you noticed that, you know, they're building 20, 40, 80 million dollars, I forget the exact numbers you're telling me, but like obviously they're having success, they know what they're doing, but what would you, when when you continue to step into that version of yourself, like how do you want to show up that like doesn't leave that bad taste in the mouths of like the people that are around you?
No, absolutely. I think when you have investors in a company, right, and so they were 100 million, they wanted to get to 500 million, right, and their goal was to kind of sell the company, right? That was like their big thing. So, which is an awesome goal. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do think what I saw from that is that when you put money so far ahead and you put in the investors, right? And what do the investors want? They want a return on their investment, right? And so the investors are basically putting pressure on the executive team. And, you know, I was part of that executive team and so I just felt like some of the messaging was like, it was so numbers related. It was so data metrics, which is great. Data is a great indicator, but sometimes when you get so heavy on that, like they would send the message to me like, hey, this is kind of like we need X amount of sales like from this quarter and normal business stuff. But it was framed in such a way where it didn't really connect to the people below me. And a lot of times that's what your job is, right? Your job is to filter stuff and then take it down. And so I would take this message of, okay, we got to get this many sales. And I would basically frame it into a way where, hey, we're going to go impact a lot of families. Like, what does this mean to them, right? They're going to have more money. And I would frame it in a way where there's a lot of motivation, inspiration around it, where it would get the teams, like all of my regionals, like jacked up. And so, but that was kind of this thing, is like you hear this message, sales, right? And you're like, okay, great. Yeah, you want more sales? No shit, right? And it's like, and then I would kind of have to go back and frame that the right way. I think what I really love as being an entrepreneur is like, I don't have to basically, we all want more sales, and who doesn't want more money? That's kind of an obvious, but that doesn't necessarily move the needle on people, right? And so we can use data and metrics to kind of observe and say, hey, how are you doing on this and this? And so that's a key part of any business. But I would say the number one thing is don't forget that you're dealing with people first, right? And if you focus on impacting people, if you focus on leveling them up, making them a better version of themselves, focus on not being greedy. Like investors, I'm not saying all investors are greedy, but I felt like the investors to the executive team, it was a very greedy feeling, right? It just didn't feel like a flow of like, hey, we have an organism of like a company, and this company's full of people that have families. And so I think when people get a little more connected to who they're serving, right? I look like I'm working for my guys. Like it's not, bosses that kind of come down and say, oh, I'm the big leader. So it's like I'm working beside my guys. Like, and I feel like I really am working for them. And I think that's a shift in what I felt like was there. It felt like very top down, and this is more of a collaboration. Like I win when they win, right?
It's community driven.
Yeah.
And I think like more so than ever, like that's where the world is right now. There's so much less of the bosses up here, or even like at events. Like that's, when we throw our events, that's what I always talk about, is like, it's not me up here on stage, me and the person I'm having a conversation with. It's like, we want to open this up. We want to have a conversation with everyone to feel included. It's like the guru model is not really working anymore because people are done with it.
For sure.
And I'd say that's why you're winning, is because your guys believe in you and they feel like you guys are all doing it together, and that's absolutely amazing. And yeah, I've had a realization recently. I'm really blessed. I have an amazing business partner. We have meetings on Mondays and Fridays, so got to talk to him today, and he's just one of those guys that has just been grounding me and like helping me remember what's important all the time. And I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Do you know Russ? Do you listen to his music?
Yeah, I love Russ.
He's got, if you ever heard Utah Freestyle?
I don't know if I've heard that one, no.
I'll have to show it to you, but there's a lyric in it. He said something about what what his 20s told you is like, stay away from people that put money over everything.
Oh, I've heard that line for sure. Yeah.
Because it's like, yes, of course, money is,
Right.
it's what drives this world.
Right.
But when it starts becoming the idol,
Right.
when it's over everything,
Yep.
that's when I feel like you can get in trouble, and that's where greed and power comes in, and people just want more and more, and it's never enough.
For sure.
And it kind of sounds like that's what these guys were in. It's interesting too, because like I have some friends that they made a lot of money, and it's like easy to get into that mindset. But that's why, again, coming back to this conversation, it's like so important on who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And I think I had this realization even this morning, is like I was showing my business partner this graphic that I put together, and I'm so excited about everyone. I've only showed it to a couple people. They're all like, "Oh, that's amazing! That's amazing!" And he's sitting there like just looking at it, and he's like, well, "What's this? What's this?" And at first, I'm like, "Why aren't you congratulating me?
Right.
Why aren't you validating me?" But like, he's like, "Well, why this? Why this?" And then, he's like, "Oh, yeah, I like it. It's good." But it's just like it feels good to not have, especially the people that are closest to you,
Right.
not be yes people.
Right.
Because I think that's how you can quickly get out of remembering what's important when people are just hyping you up.
Right.
And it's like a lot of times that can be the beginning stages of people, like they just want to be around you because they see the benefits that can come with it.
Right. Right.
So those were all just kind of thoughts firing.
No, I love it. I agree. Yeah, we're more of like a self-development company that kind of happens to sell solar. That's what we have on our Instagram. Like, we're all about improving the lives of people we work with, and the vehicle could be something different, right? Let's say in 5 years, solar's not here or whatever the case is. Like, it can be something totally different. So that's what I love. I love what you do, because you're basically going directly into manifestation. Like, a lot of stuff we teach these guys, we do topics on manifestation, right? How to take care of finances, like every little aspect of what it takes to be a good person. Like, we try to teach that. And a lot of guys, we have we have guys that are like just barely out of high school doing this job, all the way up to like, we have 50-year-olds. So it's a wide gap of people that are looking for, good opportunity, and it feels good.
That's amazing. Because, yeah, I was even like, that question had kind of popped in my mind even before you mentioned this personal development, and then solar's the vehicle. Hermosi talks a lot about the vehicle, and a metaphor that I've drawn is that, like, we talk about the woo and the do, right? So woo is more like the personal development side of things. Do is more of the vehicle, right? And so the metaphor I like to draw is that the woo is the gasoline.
Nice.
And so then the vehicle is, solar or whatever the business is.
Right.
But when you have the proper gasoline, you can transfer vehicles. Because, I mean, just look at it.
Yeah.
We all have had vehicles, we've gotten new ones, and they continue to evolve. They keep on making new ones.
Yep.
The gas isn't really changing.
Right.
I mean, a little bit,
Yeah.
like electric and whatnot. But I think that's what's going to help you guys really sustain and continue this success no matter what happens. Because, I mean, the world's evolving, it's changing.
Yeah.
It's changing quickly.
Right.
And who knows what solar is going to be? Who knows what anything? I reflect on this because there's an olive garden over here. I went to it a few times, and they floored it. And I look out there and I'm just like, that can happen.
Right.
Like, something that was here that you were like sitting in this restaurant, all of a sudden is gone.
Yeah.
And that could be the case for this building.
Yeah.
It could be the case for solar. It could be the case for so many different things.
Yeah.
But the thing that you can't replace is like that internal work, that personal development that you do on yourself, where you're so strong that like that's the thing that people can't take away from you.
For sure. Well, I think one of the reasons to do personal development work is so you are aware of what your ego is saying versus like following like the path, right? Like, what if you're in a business super hyper competitive? Like, we're the largest sales org in Arizona, right? So we did like 300 and plus some accounts in August, which is a huge deal. And you don't get there by following ego, right? A lot of companies went out of business in the last year or two. One of the largest install companies in the nation just went out of business, right? One of the large leasing companies, Premium Panels, right, just went out of business. And so part of that, I believe, is you get stuck in ego, right? You get stuck in, no, we have to do it this way. We have to, and they're not adapting. It's like, hey, why aren't people coming to your restaurant? Like, what should we change? Maybe maybe you have shitty ingredients. Maybe people don't really, around here, it's not like a cool, hopping spot. So you got to change some things. And so versus just sticking to the model, in solar, a lot of companies, they just kept buying leads, right? They kept trying to sell loans when the interest rates have went high. So it's just interesting. I mean, part of it comes with experience and wisdom, being able to adapt quickly. But I believe a lot of the self-development work that we do in the company, it helps eliminate ego and then having to be right.
Yes.
If you don't have to be right, it's like, well, I can pivot very quickly without having a big uproar in my internal system, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's a big thing.
So much. And I think it comes back to what we were talking about before we got on camera, is the return on energy.
Right.
It's like, I love that. That's been something big for me, because I recognize my ego's a motherfucker, man.
Yeah.
It's a sneaky guy. And I've noticed that from time to time. Like, I do have my ego wants to be right a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's like, just to be transparent, like, as a coach, like, there's a quote that Steve Wynn said. He said, whatever behavior is validated gets repeated. And so as a coach, like, I take this mentorship role, and people are looking to me for advice, and not even just like in our coaching programs, but even, through content and building my brand and all this stuff, which I actually want to talk to you about. And because I want to correlate that to like why these businesses I think are going out of business as well. Yeah. But like, when I'm constantly giving advice and sharing all this stuff with people, and then they're like, oh, that's amazing, I'm sure. It's like, then I start developing this identity of like, oh, I'm so wise, and I know the answers, and then it starts developing. When you go too far and you don't have people that are truly bringing you back on, and grounding you, it's like I can quickly get into that phase of like, oh, I want to share this, because like, then I'll get this validation of these people saying, oh, damn, yeah, you're right, damn, that's so profound, like, I never thought about it like that. But at the end of the day, all it is about winning. It's about like giving the glory to God and helping everybody win. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think a lot of people share to feed the ego, and like you said, it's like, oh, look how great I am. And whereas like there's if you're really consciously listening to people, which I feel like you do a great job with, and like there's definitely like signs or wisdom that comes through us. I think that, sometimes like just share what's needed that's going to help them, right? Or maybe guide through a question instead of like making this profound statement. Like, that's someone in a whole different space, right? If you're very present, you're not like, I need to be the best. It's like, you're way more in a service oriented position to like truly impact that person, because you're focused on them more, right?
Yeah, it's about just helping everybody win. Let's all go up, instead of the guru model where it's like, let me be up here. And that's why it's been interesting too, even like with mentors. Not too much, but every once in a while, like I've noticed it with a couple, is like they really take the fact that they're the mentor and I'm the mentee. Right. And it's like, that doesn't, like, always like, hey, doors always open. Right. Like, you've got access to me. Right. I'm like, dude, like, we're colleagues. Yeah. Like, we can learn from each other. Exactly. And I just think, like, again, it just comes back to like the win-win-win model, everybody. Yeah. As opposed to like, I'm up here, you're down here, which ultimately just comes back down to a judgment thing. Yeah. And so I really do my best to like not judge. I know my ego pops up a lot, and I do my best to ground it, but it's like, when we can realize that we're all just the same, no one's better, no one's worse than anybody, that just puts you in a really powerful spot. For sure. A couple of last things I want to chat about is brand, because the way I perceive this brand, and that's kind of the direction we're leaning in, and an authentic brand, because man, it's one of those things that I feel people are struggling with. Yeah. Even I was having a client call yesterday, and she's like, I just hate social media. And I was like, let's talk about that. And she was like, I feel like I need to be perfect and all this. And then all of a sudden we're starting to talk about like authenticity and what does that really mean? Right. And I've had my bouts with it as well, like, especially as a content creator and putting things out. Like, where do you find that balance of like going after things that you want and like pushing through and being positive, versus like some days you're just like not feeling at your best. But I just feel like social media and just even like go to like networking events and it's like a cesspool of people just like, hey, what do you do? Like, it's
Yeah.
never like having like genuine conversations at some of those events. And that's why I really genuinely appreciated that whole environment at Stacy's.
Yeah.
But the thing I was going to say in terms of brand, I think, and this is my perspective, I'd love to hear yours, but some of these solar companies, when you're saying they're just buying leads and trying to like sell, it's like hunting and killing.
Right.
There's not a there's not a whole lot of return on energy there. It's just like shot, kill, shot, kill, shot, kill. Okay, where's more leads?
Right.
But when you build a brand and you have a reputation and you have people that like really vouch for you,
Right.
which again, it's interesting because I think a lot of people associate brand as just like social media content.
Right. Right.
But like you have a really strong brand.
Yeah.
Because you have all of your guys that vouch for you because you're the leader, you're with them though.
For sure.
Just like what we're talking about, that community model.
Yeah.
And so you have a strong brand and that's why you guys are winning because everyone vouches for you and like they're like, yeah, fuck with this guy.
Absolutely.
Right. And so it's ultimately just building relationships at scale.
Yeah.
And it can come in different formats, it could come online, offline. But I wanted to just mention that because I think that's interesting. I think kind of gone are the days of just like shoot and kill type of businesses because eventually like there's not a whole lot of return off of or beyond just like the sell them and
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think of branding as like kind of what are the 5 things that someone's going to say about you, right? What are the 5 topics that like come to mind? And so I was one of those people who had a big issue with Instagram. I was like, I just didn't want to, like I grew up around people that if you had something like, if you're wealthy or rich or whatever, you were like more reserved, like you don't want people to know, right? And sometimes I feel like in marketing or branding, you have to be louder, right? And so I had to really work on that a lot because I have a lot of great things to say, but I was like timid to say those things, like, oh, what are they gonna say or judge me, right? Yeah. And so I definitely am a lot louder on Instagram and everything there, but I'm honestly just trying to be genuine. Like I just want to share things that like, I love health, right? So I'll share healthy things that I learn online or whatever, food. You know, I love basically building my business. So anything around creation and solar, I love impacting, help people. So anything on consciousness or helping people, anything with my dog and my girl, like I love posting traveling pictures and everything fun we do. So, you know, I that's kind of more my personal brand. I think when it comes to the company, you're absolutely right. Like people, it spreads like wildfire. If you really help people and we change people's lives. Like, you know, we have 20-year-olds making $300,000. I have, you know, people that are millionaires that work for me and like, so it's an amazing feeling and it's not all about the money. It's like, it's the self-development and everything we're doing underneath that's translating to the money side. Mm-hmm. People will tell everyone and anyone they know about that. And so, I wouldn't say I'm like the best brand, you know, marketing guru by any means, but I do feel like having that foundation is key to kind of that organic spread.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree with that as like, well, hold on. You said you're not the best, but like, I want to kind of like mirror some things for you to maybe give you a little bit different perspective. I look at like marketing and branding as, again, relationships at scale.
Right.
So maybe you haven't like built out like a huge following online.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you're not good at branding and marketing because you're good at building relationships from what I can tell.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like expanding that more because your online brand is just a way to like scale it out more. It's because it's interesting, like a lot of people will go the flip way where it's like, they're like, oh, social media, got to put a bunch of stuff out there, but they don't have like the core built.
Right.
And because of that, then like no one like really believes what they're saying and no one really like gravitates to it. How many people have millions of followers and no one really gives a shit about them?
Right.
And don't buy anything from them.
Yeah.
Like I remember went to this conference, a guy that I followed for quite some time, been a mentor, so to speak. He told me, or he was sharing the story at one of the events, and he said they had a dating offer. They were helping men with dating advice.
Nice.
And they went to a bunch of these like Instagram models thinking that like, oh, there's all these thirsty dudes that need help with dating advice. So they like did a promo with them and like, I think they got like, you know, hundreds of leads but like no one bought. It was like a $7 offer or something like that. So like this hot chick put out this thing of, hey, here's a dating advice book, $7, and like no one bought it out of millions of followers.
Wow. That's crazy.
And so I think that like really that's where I come back to is like, it's not even necessarily like personal brand that people don't know how to do. It's authentic personal branding. because people gravitate and buy into people that are authentic and are
Right.
genuine.
Right.
That's why people follow you. That's why
Right.
people vouch for you.
Right.
And then it's just a matter if you want to like get your message out to more people.
Yeah.
But I think from my perspective, like you've got that down pat.
Yeah, I love that perspective because we have a ton of friends, so many relationships. Like I really do feel like I'm very, very good at that, and it's because it comes from a genuine spot, right? Yeah. Honestly, going back to just the story, like if you don't feel like your family has been there for you, right, which is totally not the case. Like that's like the feeling of the little child. What do you do in return? You're constantly trying to basically create family. Right. So no matter where I was in my life, I've created family and relationships. So it's come from the most genuine place I can, it wasn't fake. Right. But if I was trying to be a networker or a marketer, I might do the same thing, but it probably feels very differently. Right. And I think that's actually one of the secrets to some of my success. I have so many friends from different states I've lived in, and so it's a cool feeling, and I actually really appreciate your perspective because what we're trying to do right now is we recruit probably 5-10 guys a month on Instagram. We probably do about 40 a month based on other organic and Indeed and all these things. So one of the things we're really trying to do is how do we spread that authentic message out. So really cool to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, dude, you got the foundation built. It's just better putting a little other strategy in place. I mean, it's simple too because I'm not sure, I haven't checked your Solar page, but it's so easy to like set up some retargeting campaigns that people already follow you and you just distribute more exposure.
Yeah.
I can show you how to do that if you want, but
That's awesome.
It's like what you've already built is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Now it's just a matter of like utilizing some tools to get the message out a little bit more.
Absolutely.
One last thing I wanted to finish up on is like the vision video.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because damn, dude. One, it was just when you showed me, I was like, I loved it because like I'm so inspired by people that are visionaries,
right,
and have the courage to like put it out there. Because like that one other thing I was going to mention too is like I think also like the journey of building a personal brand, it's conversation, it's building relationships, and it also is like putting content out there.
Right.
And it's one of the most powerful personal development journeys I've ever been on. Mm-hmm. Like I would not be the person I am today if I didn't like commit to like continue to build relationships, continue to put content out there, continue to throw events and like push that courage muscle.
right.
So it's so important, and it's just like one of the coolest personal development journeys, and that's why I'm feeling so connected to it as well, because I feel like it really helps people when they really start really being intentional about building their brand. And part of that is like putting themselves out there, and casting that vision. There's a maybe you've seen it. There was I think it was a post-fight interview with Conor McGregor, and he was saying, if you have, what is it? See if it comes to me exactly, but I'll kind of paraphrase. But he's basically saying that if you have the vision and you can feel it in your heart, you can see it in your mind, you can feel it in your heart, and you have the courage to speak it out, it will come true.
Right.
And so that's why I'm really inspired by people like you that like have the courage to put it out there. Mm-hmm. And when you showed me your vision, because like a lot of people from what I've seen is like sometimes like a lot of our clients obviously are not that way anymore because we're helping them do it all. But like a lot of people, and I know for me personally, before I remember why I brought that up is I remember seeing that a long time ago, and I was petrified about speaking my vision, because I was like, God forbid, like what if I put it out there and I speak it and it doesn't come true?
Right.
And I was like, I will look like an idiot. People laugh at me. They'll be pointing at me like he said he was going to do this and he didn't.
Right.
And I mean, like I'm so disconnected from that now, but I do recall that time. So point being, what I'm getting at is like, it was so cool to see your video.
Yeah.
It was so cool to see how someone else thinks very similar to me of like just taking the concept of a vision and then like putting it out there. So just to give a little bit more context is that you put together a video about all the things that you want to create in business and personal, and it was just highly produced, and you're like, dude, I feel like I need to show this to you. And we're sitting out on the trampoline with a bunch of other people, and we're like, I think we need to go inside and like give this some proper attention. So you showed it to me. So maybe share a little bit about that. But yeah, I just want to say like I'm super inspired by that.
Yeah.
And obviously the fact that we're so aligned with that is it's really
For
cool.
sure. No, I felt like, I had this whiteboard that kind of helped me organize. You had this Excel file that was like tracking metrics for personal development. I was like, dude, we're going to get along. So, showing the video was something that I've kind of made when I was like 25, super, put it together on Final Cut, and pretty much decided, I was like, I understood law of attraction. I understand if you have the thought, you feel as though it's here now, right? You don't pray for rain. You pray rain is like, it's super wet, like it's soaking down, right? And so that's kind of the mentality that I took. I was very blessed to kind of learn from, Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza, and really work with a coach that helped me do this. So part of that was work to get to that point. Then once I understood that this is how it works, like this is how the universe and our reality works, then why would I not try to make myself feel like that every single day? And so I do believe meditation and can probably get you there just as quick. But if you're not used to that, right? I think programs like yours, right, or mine, right, where it's like visual or auditorial, and if you can get yourself into that high frequency state of basically painting a picture of success, what does it look like? How would you feel? What would people say to you, right? What are the sounds and the feelings, and just really wrap yourself. And so it started with kind of a low budget, video, and then I ended up paying a videographer to kind of help me make the one that I showed you. And I can honestly say that I've accomplished every single goal that I've had in my previous video. This next one, we just hit 300 accounts. I have a goal of having 20 teams. I have 100 people that work for me. So there's some goals that haven't been obtained, but it's actually spooky, almost like how much you have to keep making new ones. And I know you said that with your visual express notes, right? You can't, once you obtain those things, it's like, whoa, like that was quick, right? And I have to edit it again. So that's pretty much what I've been doing for a long, long time. And I do incorporate a little bit of that, like in a journaling or really just in my own visualizations too. So it's really cool.
So cool. And it's funny you say that like it's spooky, because I was running on the treadmill today, and I had made the one I showed you was like a brand new one, and something that I threw in there because I really want to start putting more of a stronger emphasis on like my health and like getting regular blood work done and that whole realm, which is something I hadn't put in.
Yeah.
And I was kind of laughing because I did like this trade with this girl. We're in talks about doing some different things, and she basically is like doing a full like health panel on me.
Nice.
Which just like it just came out of nowhere. She's like, "Hey, would you like this?" And then I was just reflecting on that while I was running today. I was like, "Oh shit."
Well, one of the things that I was like, I want to get on more podcasts, because I've done a couple, and I just like this experience. I feel like sharing, right? So that's been something on my mind. So of course this comes in. And then the other thing, that the Skool program, right, online curriculum, that's been a big piece. We kind of built out this for our company with like our curriculum for sales, and our setters and our closer curriculum, but I've been thinking that would be cool to build a curriculum more to like help people, right? Something I could share more with the world. And then last night, as I'm doing the visual espresso stuff, I'm going through your curriculum. I was like, dude, so pretty cool.
Yeah, man. I'm really excited to just continue to dive into more and support each other, because I think there's just so much alignment. A couple of last things I was going to share is, so I don't know if when you showed it to me, another really just interesting piece is I don't know if you realize, do you know who Eddie Pinero is, Your World Within?
I think I can't put a face to it, but I think you mentioned that it was when
Yeah, so you have like a minute, I think it was like at least a minute of his clip in your video.
Yep.
And back in August, he was sitting right there.
No way.
Yeah, so
That's
he's
crazy.
a good friend. He lives up in North Scottsdale. He comes to our thing, so
that's awesome.
I definitely want you guys to meet.
That's
because
awesome.
Because I'll tell him stuff about like, dude, you don't realize the impact that you're having. And he's just like, what? This is crazy. Like, I don't even realize. And it's funny because we did a dinner, a few months back, and then one of the guys that came, he's like, "Hey, you're Eddie." He's like, "Dude, I show my girlfriend your stuff all the time." And
nice.
It's wild. And
that's cool.
There's quite a story on how I even got connected with him, because I used to listen to his stuff all the time. Anyways, it was just really cool. And then I felt like there was one last thing I was wanting to share. Yeah, the updating things, because people and I've experienced this too, is like when you hit all your goals, and if you don't up them,
Right.
that's how you can quickly start going down.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I see that with a lot of my sales reps, right? They get complacent because they've made more money than they've ever made, right? And so that can happen a lot. And then you kind of go, and if you're not growing, you're kind of dying is the way I look at it.
Yes.
So you kind of got to rebalance and refocus your goals and keep on moving.
Well, that's where this came from, just grow. So we were, I've shared this a little bit here and there. It's been a while since I have, but my girlfriend at the time and I went up to Flagstaff and we were glamping, actually. Have you ever glamped?
Like really nice camping bases. Yeah, I've done that.
Well, we even had, it was like a cabin, but it just had like no running water.
Okay.
So it was a cool experience for sure. But we're sitting out there, obviously ate some mushrooms and we're looking up at the trees and we're like, oh shit. Like they kind of have it figured out. Like what do? They just keep growing, and once they stop growing, they start dying. And so it's just about continue to level up more and more.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, great name. Got to give her full credit. Dude, this has been awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for a great conversation, sharing your time and your energy. I know it's extremely valuable and what you're building right now. I guess 2 last questions I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear just a little bit more of like, what is like your vision moving forward? And then last question is, what would you love for people to take away from this conversation that we had?
Yeah. My vision right now is to be the largest solar company in the Southwest. We're the largest in Arizona. So, we're trying to duplicate and kind of scale ourselves. We have great leadership group. So, my vision, I've been with Ashley for about 1.5 years. So we're looking to get married here soon, have kids. And I'm looking to upgrade my house in North Scottsdale area. And then, a lot of our vision is creating community and kind of around like sound healing and breath work. So we do a lot of stuff that's, Ashley's a facilitator in that actually. So she just got through a 9-month course. So we're setting up kind of a home that's going to be a little bit more for helping people. And then we can have big parties and fun stuff too. And so, that's kind of the vision right now, and just keep growing. I have a ton of coaches and, always looking to kind of go through the depths of self-development and looking at myself. And, I think if I was to leave everybody with something, I think, making sure you're really looking at what you're getting in life, right? If there's constant loops or constant themes in your life, like you're always seeing the same guy or the same girl or the same problem in your relationships, or when I talk to my mom or my sister, there's always the same trigger, right? I think for me, what I've identified is we're in like kind of a matrix, or we're in some type of like quantum reality where the world is designed to kind of throw back your shit at you because your beliefs and your internal perspectives is what is basically mirroring out. That is what I believe. And I do believe a lot of how, if you watch the news or a lot of the stuff, it's kind of designed to like divide us and distract us and really make us confused. So if there's anything to take from this, I think if you feel confused or you feel like, I don't understand why this is always happening, I think really look for those themes and then stop looking for the external, right? Go into the internal, get clear, get that clarity first, and then really dive deep. I've looked a lot of my life of running away from things, right? Like, I don't like the way abandonment feels. I don't like the way I don't feel safe, or I don't like the way I don't feel valued. And that will cause a lot of pain because you'll continue to seek things externally to resolve that pain. But what I've found is that if you go directly to the pain, really feel it, dissolve it, and then work with someone like yourself or put in new images of what you really want to create, that's what it is to be a conscious being. Most people are operating fairly on like a sheep level, right? They're just like, that bugged me, it stressed me, and then they keep working and they're constantly kind of drowning because people just aren't able to get out of that, right? And if you can't get out of that, you're pretty much subjective to all your bullshit inside, and life is just going to keep hitting you over and over again the same way. So identifying that is huge, and you can get out of it really quickly if you know it, to go straight towards it. So.
Yeah, if you can see it.
Yeah.
I think this will be a great quote for us to end on, and then just want you to let everyone know where they can find you. I think Carl Jung, I believe this is his quote. It said, until you until you can make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule your until you can make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule your life, and you'll call it fate.
Wow. I love that.
So it's like just what you said.
That's
it's
spot on.
running your life until you can get aware of what's really going on.
Right. That's cool. I love it.
Well, dude, thank you for being here. Where
Yeah.
can people find you? Like, what kind of people would you like to connect with?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. So I'm on Instagram. So Jordan, Jordan, and then Seif, Seif, as in Frank. So that's where you can find me. I love to connect with like-minded people, man. Anyone that's into self-development, consciousness, health, anyone that's trying to, mingle and kind of network with the right type of people. Like, we're movers and shakers. We're doing big things, and I know you're connected with a lot of the same people. So yeah, there's just a big community of people that are looking to do big things and connect and are tired of, maybe the fake. It's like people that are authentic and genuine. I'm big on all that. So
Awesome, brother. I appreciate
awesome.
you, man.
Oh yeah.